Guys, I still can't believe it. Leclerc will start from pole position in the Hungarian GP. He set an incredible time of 1 minute and 15.372 seconds, putting himself ahead of both McLarens, and he himself said, "I don't know how it's possible that I'm on pole." He set an unbelievable lap, and both Piastri and Norris said the same thing. It was a Leclerc lap, achieved mainly thanks to his talent. We know how strong Charles is in qualifying, and today, in my opinion, he delivered one of his best qualifying performances ever, maybe even the best, considering the car he's driving and his rivals, the McLarens, who are much faster, especially on a track like Hungary. Let's take a look together. Before we start, as always, subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave a like to support the videos here on the channel. Let's analyze each session, let's break down the lap times, and let's also listen to the reactions after the sessions, in this case, after qualifying, and of course, we'll make some comparisons between the various drivers. That said, let's get started by first looking at the standings, which show Leclerc in pole position with 1 minute and 15.372 seconds, Piastri in second with 1 minute and 15.398 seconds, and Norris third. So Piastri was also very close to Leclerc, and Norris too. If you consider 26 thousandths and 41 thousandths, that's nothing. Then Russell is fourth, 53 thousandths behind, Alonso fifth, Stroll sixth. Look at how tight the gaps are. The two McLarens are within 50 thousandths, Russell also within 50 thousandths, Alonso a 10th, Stroll a 10th. Bortoleto was a bit further back at 3/10, then Verstappen 8th, a bit of a disappointment. Red Bull today, I don't know, in the 10th range. We'll also talk about Hamilton later, 12th obviously. We have to comment on the disappointment of the British driver and his words on the team radio. But first, let me point out the best sectors, which are all Piastri's, 27.3, 26.3, 21.0, while Leclerc didn't set the best sectors but managed to put together the best overall time in the end. In fact, now we'll look at everything, including Leclerc's lap times. But guys, give this guy a medal because he did an incredible lap on a day when Ferrari almost risked going out in Q1 and Q2. We also saw a bit of rain. There were situations where Ferrari almost got knocked out in Q1 or Q2, and in the end, Hamilton did get knocked out in Q2. So, it was a risky situation, but Leclerc managed to put the team on pole position. On a track where even yesterday Ferrari was the second force, but taking pole seemed unthinkable with this McLaren that was definitely flying, especially in race pace, but even in qualifying, that second sector seemed unbeatable. Instead, Charles pulled off some magic. He definitely worked his magic in tire temperature management, managing not to overheat the tires too much in the first and second sectors, keeping the temperature a bit lower in the third sector, and that was an advantage Leclerc was able to exploit. Another thing is that he was very smart in Q2, going out immediately to set a time and thus avoiding traffic. So Leclerc was very clever today. He understood what the car needed to best warm up the tires on the prep lap before the qualifying lap, and he fine-tuned everything in Q2 to then be competitive in Q3. In fact, even the prep lap was the winning weapon in the end to take this pole position. Let's also look at the various lap times. Actually, before that, let's listen to Leclerc's reaction. I want you to hear it too, Charles's team radio. Well, here we also see his celebration, which we have to watch together. Here's Charles celebrating for pole. Man, how emotional he made us. Guys, I almost can't believe it. By the way, it came very early because he was one of the first to go out. Then we saw the other drivers come in and none of them improved, not Piastri, not Norris, not even Russell or Verstappen, so in the end, this pole was confirmed. Let's also listen to the team radio from
Leclerc, so we can comment on it together, and then also see the
times because it's really interesting. Let's hear from Leclerc. Even he couldn't believe he managed to set that time, Pole and Toba and Brian Botzi say. But where did that time come from? How did you pull that off? And that's a bit of Charles's talent, very often. Even he doesn't know how much talent he has, how he's able to go so fast and put it all together to set that time. It's almost something natural, something he has inside him, you know? It's not something you can really explain in words. And in this case, Leclerc once again showed his talent in qualifying, how fast he can go, and he set a masterpiece of a lap. I'll also show you the summary of the times so you can see just how much Leclerc did compared to the other drivers. If you look at Q3, these are the Q3 times. We see he did a 1 minute and 16.6 seconds on his first attempt and then a 1 minute and 15.3 seconds. He really dropped the time by a lot. On the other hand, if we look at Norris, for example, he did 1 minute and 15.4 seconds, 1 minute and 15.4 seconds, and then another 1 minute and 15.4 seconds. So he didn't improve at all. Well, he improved by just a handful of thousandths. Even Piastri did a 1 minute and 15.3 seconds and then a 1 minute and 15.5 seconds, so he actually got worse. So you see, McLaren did a good first attempt in Q3, but then they didn't improve. Leclerc, on the other hand, had a first attempt that was pretty slow. If you will, 1 minute and 16.6 seconds wasn't a great time, but then he managed to improve and set an incredible 1 minute and 15.3 seconds. So, an amazing time. By the way, in Q2 he did a 1 minute and 15.4 seconds, which shows he had the pace to do a good lap. But you can see the improvement line is pretty linear. 1 minute and 15.4 seconds, 1 minute and 15.3 seconds. Meanwhile, Norris ended up with a 1 minute and 15.4 seconds. You expected a bit more from McLaren, for sure, especially since Piastri did a 1 minute and 15.1 second. Norris did a 1 minute and 15 seconds. They had the potential to do a better lap. They did 1 minute and 14.8 seconds, 1 minute and 14.9 seconds. The potential was there for McLaren to do a better lap, but they couldn't put it all together, so they didn't manage to get the good lap in. If you want, let's also comment on the times in general, because I want to. Let's also talk about the positive notes from this qualifying, because we saw a great Russell in 4th position, a Mercedes that's clearly improved with the return to the old rear suspension. It's become more consistent and also faster in qualifying. We'll have to see how it does in the race. Aston Martin in 5th with Alonso. Alonso did an incredible qualifying. It seemed like just yesterday he was unwell and then was also relegated to the back in FP1. Well, actually, sorry, he skipped FP1. In FP2 he was a bit behind, but then he managed to make progress. Well, today, wow, he confirmed himself up front, even ahead of Stroll, and Bortolito in 7th did a fantastic qualifying, especially compared to Hülkenberg 19th. He made an incredible difference. The rookies at Sauber also had a great qualifying, all things considered, even that of Ollie Behrman, who put himself ahead of Gasly, who was knocked out. Behrman 14th, Gasly 17th. As for the negative notes of the day, if you will, there's Verstappen, Hamilton, and Antonelli. Verstappen 8th, he definitely did the best he could with his Red Bull. There was nothing more Red Bull could do, and we saw that. But he finished 3/10 behind Leclerc, which isn't even that much, but with such small gaps, there was nothing more Red Bull could do. The car didn't improve today, so that was the maximum for Verstappen. He has little feeling with the front end, and you could see that. Lawson 9th, Tsunoda 10th, and that gives you a sense of the situation at Red Bull. Verstappen did just a 10th better than the other two Racing Bulls drivers. Then, for example, Sargent is 16th, so way back, but from Verstappen you expect more, so 8th is a bit disappointing. And then Hamilton, guys, let's talk about the Hamilton case. Because I also heard the team radio, every time, said by Hamilton, which could refer to several things. Every time could mean he went out a bit late in Q2 and so didn't have time to do a good attempt to warm up the tires properly, but in my opinion, it refers more to the fact that every time he's unlucky, because in this case Hamilton was knocked out by just a few thousandths. Here, I don't know if it's shown, but he did a 1 minute and 15.7 seconds, while Behrman's time was 1 minute and 15.6 seconds, and if I'm not mistaken, Bortolito was just ahead, qualifying in that position by just a few thousandths. So, really unlucky for Hamilton, who was knocked out by so little. But, wow, your teammate gets pole and you get knocked out in 12th, you have to admit the responsibility is definitely on Hamilton. On a track where he's won so many times, a track he really likes, where he even got the last pole in 2023, in short, a track where Hamilton has always gone strong in Hungary. Getting knocked out in Q2 with this Ferrari, which, like it or not, gets pole, leaves a bit of a bitter taste for Hamilton, who once again has to fight back from behind. So, let's listen to Hamilton's team radio at the end.
All time here at the Hungarian. For the first time, he's knocked out in Q2.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he's had it. You know, we talked about this even in the early stage of Q1, didn't we? Lewis was going to be under pressure, and he certainly ended up being that way. Here we got to hear that radio call saying, "You are out," and it's P13 as well. It's not even P11. Every time.
This is the team radio every time from Lewis, and as we can also see from the graphic, I'll show it to you right now. You can see that he was excluded by 15 thousandths, 13 thousandths in this case. Behrman 12 thousandths, Antonelli 11 thousandths, and then Bortolito had qualified. He missed out by just a tiny margin, so every time there's this bad luck, Hamilton gets knocked out like this. But, guys, it's also a bet on Hamilton, who can't maximize the potential of the Ferrari. Obviously, he's a 7-time world champion, he deserves respect, and he's incredibly fast. But at this moment, Charles is definitely able to understand the car better, also because he contributed to the development of the car. He definitely got to test some components before Hamilton did, so Leclerc has this advantage in terms of development management. But from a 7-time world champion, you expect a reaction, and it has to come not just in the race, because at Spa, it was kind of the same situation, knocked out in Q1, then he made a comeback. But we want a Hamilton who does well in qualifying too, not just in the race. Otherwise, sure, you bring home points because you can recover, but you can't maximize the car's potential if you start so far back. So I expected him to be further ahead. I'll also show you the gaps. He's had several pole positions in Hungary. Let's see, 0.026 thousandths, Leclerc's pole in 2025, 0.022 thousandths in 2024, then 3 thousandths in 2023, and 44 thousandths in 2022. So you see, the gaps in Hungary are always tiny, it's always a circuit where the margins are minimal. So every little mistake, you end up paying for it on track and in the final standings. I'll also show you the quote and Leclerc's post-qualifying statements. He said, "Today I didn't understand anything about Formula 1. This is probably my best pole position ever." That's what Leclerc said, and he was definitely very surprised by this pole, because it's a pole position that no one expected, not even him. So he really made the difference here. As a driver, Leclerc made an incredible difference with his driving. I'll also let you hear Hamilton's post-qualifying statements, because they're very interesting, and then we'll analyze them. "Listen, guys," he said, "I'm useless." I mean, Hamilton, I'll also show you the face he made when he said it, because we need to comment on this expression together. Look here, this is Lewis as he says he's useless. He says it to the Formula 1 microphones. "I'm useless. We haven't changed anything from yesterday in the setup, and we need to change the setup." After, obviously, the change we talked about in free practice 2, but from free practice 2 onwards, they didn't change anything. So, I'm useless. I drove terribly, he said. So he basically put the blame for the defeat on himself, compared to his teammate. He really feels guilty with Ferrari for not extracting the maximum potential from the car. And this should be recognized, Hamilton is a driver who owns up to his mistakes. But, and this is very important, there needs to be a reaction. So we're waiting for a reaction from Lewis. Look at this face, he's just so dejected. It's tough to see Lewis like this. Obviously, it's sad to see him behind, both in terms of position and also so down during interviews. So let's see if he can recover tomorrow. I hope so, obviously, but the track should be harder to overtake on than Spa. But we expect more from Hamilton in qualifying, guys. He needs to be faster on a single lap, because in the race, we know he has incredible race pace. Hamilton manages the tires well. But he needs to be faster in qualifying. So it's really tough to see him so down. On the other hand, we have a Leclerc who put in an amazing lap. I'll show you some parts of the lap, because we need to comment on them. This is Leclerc's lap. Let's go. Starting at turn 1, you can see how he holds this wider line, then tightens up, but manages a good trajectory, going around the corner without using too much of the curb, which is pointless in turn 1. Moving on to turn 2, you can see how he takes a very wide line, so he can carry a lot of speed. Even though it's a bit more distance, he still keeps up good speed. So he goes really fast. Turn 4, a tough spot. Look here, the stability holds. The SF25 stays stable. But the real difference is here. Look how close he gets to the curb in this case, and here he keeps a good line. I'll show you on exit how the car follows him. The steering, you see, he didn't even have to make a correction. Here he managed to keep a lot of lateral grip, and that was crucial. The chicane, one of the weakest points for the Ferrari SF25 in Hungary. Let's see how Leclerc handles it. He sacrifices the first curb a bit, doesn't take it too much so he can attack the second. Look how much he takes the second curb in the chicane, how much he goes over even the orange sausage curb. And here he made the difference, pushing every limit of the track. And that's really important, he didn't go over track limits, so that's something to consider, because I was a bit worried about that too. But Charles did great here. Now comes the left-right sequence of corners. It's really important to have good car balance in these turns. You can see Leclerc manages, he doesn't know everything, but he keeps the rhythm through these corners. Notice here how he uses the outside part of the curb, which gives him more grip, because this outside part, if you put your outside wheels on it, gives you grip and you can accelerate without problems. If you take the red and white curb instead, you lose a bit of grip, because it's obviously not as smooth as that outside part, which gives you more grip. Moving on, here too he gets close to the curb. Here he makes a really important difference, and here he manages not to lose control. But now we get to the most important part, which is obviously the last sector where Ferrari has always struggled here in Hungary, and especially this year they've struggled a lot in the last two corners. Let's see together how Charles handles them. Here he gets pretty close, doesn't take the curb because he wants to maximize cornering speed, uses the outside of the curb well. But now we get to the final part. Here there's also a car in front. What is it? A Mercedes? Maybe it's an Aston Martin. Yeah, I think it's an Aston Martin. Here, he makes good use of the outside curb to get more width on entry, let's say. He follows his car perfectly. It's a line that's not too wide. It's actually pretty tight, I'd say. Also, look at the steering angle. It's really high. It's a bit of a Verstappen style driving here, in the sense that you get oversteer. So you increase the steering angle on entry and in the first part of the corner, then decrease it as you lose grip on exit. In fact, you can see here how he still manages to handle it. The car loses a bit of control, but he keeps the throttle down and manages to hit the exact right spot. This gray line that he manages to take on every lap, on every outside part of the curb, gives a lot of grip. So here too, as soon as he touches it, the car regains grip and he can pick up speed again. This is a key point. Let's move on to the last corner, which is perhaps the most important of the whole track. He goes a bit wider, then recovers, goes a bit wide, then gets back to a tighter line through the corner. You can see here how he tightens the line at this point. Here too, he gives a little more steering, but the car holds. He manages to keep the car steady without making too many corrections on exit. Let me show you again here. See how he keeps the car, keeps lateral grip. This is fundamental. What McLaren has done up to now, he just gives a little steering input here, then picks it up slightly, then manages to exit and get back onto that outside gray line that gives him grip. So this consistency from Leclerc, he manages to use every inch of the track, the outside lines, the curb, even the orange sausage curb when needed, using the gray outside part, reducing the steering angle on exit when grip is lost, to avoid losing control of the car. Well, this is one of Charles's biggest advantages on a single lap, and he showed it again today. So, really impressive. Now I'll show you, also Alonso's lap. He did an amazing lap, which was spectacular. Alonso also deserves a lot of credit for what he did. Meanwhile, if we look, for example, at Verstappen, I'll show you, just to give you an example, how Verstappen, here in the middle section, at the chicane and beyond, wait, here he goes inside, here he goes outside, he really can't drive this car. He just can't, he really can't drive it. He can't even take the curbs. Basically, he can't control the rear end, and that's Max's main problem. That's pretty much everything I wanted to tell you about today's qualifying. Obviously, tomorrow, McLaren remains the favorite for the win, because their race pace was good. Leclerc, I have to say, if we look back together at FP2, let me show you quickly, because it's important, it shows us why he had a very, very interesting race pace in FP2, and... Now let's see if I can pull it up, otherwise I'll just tell you. I'll just tell you, it'll be quicker this way. He lapped roughly in times around the high 1:21s, low 1:22s on medium tires, doing 10 laps. So he was on pace with McLaren, although McLaren was already lapping a few tenths faster. But Leclerc can still fight for it, especially starting from the front, since it's hard to overtake in Hungary. So in my opinion, Charles can have a good race. I'm putting him in the fight for the win. It's hard to make a prediction, but I want to believe that Charles can win in Hungary, also because the goal for the two McLarens isn't really to win anymore, they're aiming more for the championship now. So they're not even that interested in the win, what matters is finishing one ahead of the other. So I think Leclerc can win, with Piastri second and Norris third. That's my prediction. Let me know your thoughts too, I'm curious, I always try to reply to everyone as usual. Remember to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos here on the channel. Every day we cover all the news about Ferrari and Formula 1 here from the studio. See you in the next video.